Vielen Dank. Ich werde morgen versuchen, das alles auf Deutsch zu machen. Aber ich bin in Amerika geboren und ich spreche meistens Englisch und darum werde ich das auf Englisch tun. Aber morgen werde ich versuchen, Deutsch zu sprechen. So I come from the United States, which means I have to explain myself in a new way. So let me try to do it around the issue of immigration. For the United States, immigration is a very fundamental problem because we are a country of immigrants. The first Europeans who came made sure that we would be a country of immigrants by killing everybody who they found. We are pioneers in what you might call ethnic cleansing. And so we became a nation of one wave of immigrants after another. This meant we were always dealing with the question of immigrants, whether they came from England or Germany or France or later from Poland or Italy or Russia and now from Latin America and Africa. It was a constant problem. And there were always those who welcomed immigrants, partly because they were themselves immigrants, not so much before. And then there were always people who hated immigrants, partly because they had been immigrants before. So we are stuck with the dialectic of immigration. It's always been a problem. On top of the problem, we brought in one group of immigrants, Africans, as slaves, which added a whole nother complication, the race complication on top of the immigrant. So you will understand if I begin by saying to you, there's very little new about this immigration problem for the United States. There is a little bit, but not a lot. What do I mean? Well, I believe the phrase sanctuary city comes from the United States. We now have somewhere between 60 and 70 cities who have publicly declared that they will not participate with the federal government's actions. Now that sets up a clash, legal, political, quite serious. The reason is that the federal government has laws which the state and city governments have now announced they will violate. And no one quite knows what's going to happen. And the cities include small places like New York, San Francisco, and many others. And it's not anymore just about immigration. It's about other issues. Last week, the governor of California, which is our biggest state, announced after Trump withdrew from the Paris climate accords that his name is Brown, Jerry Brown, he plans to work with the Chinese government on the Paris Accords and not with the American government, which for the largest state is a complicated situation. So there's much resistance. To be fair, I should explain that the sanctuary cities are also partnered with sanctuary churches. That's very important in the United States. The churches are now increasingly saying that they will be sanctuaries. And there again is a legal problem because we have several million what we call undocumented immigrants. That is, they didn't go through the legal procedure to come, but they're in the country. And they are now illegal, and the federal government is arresting them and deporting them in large numbers, particularly back into Central America, but other parts as well. So to be a sanctuary church is to say that the minister or the priest or the rabbi, whatever, will forbid the police from entering, which he doesn't have the law really to do. So no one knows. The next point is the next step of this. This contradiction between cities and churches and states and the federal government is a sign, and this is extremely important for Europeans to understand, and I'm not going to be subtle about this. The United States is falling apart. It is disintegrating as a society. I've lived there all my life. I was born in Ohio, which is in the middle of the country. I have never seen anything like the last 5 years. I was never prepared for anything like the last 5 years. And I urge you, as concerned Europeans, to become aware of what is going on. Mr. Trump is just the latest symptom of a very deep and, I believe, terminal disease. And that's very important. Let me give you another example, just to get an idea. 6 states out of 50, we have 50 states in the United States, 6 states out of 50 have now passed laws. There's an animal that loves me here. 6 states have passed laws that it is legal to smoke marijuana as a recreation. That is against federal law in the United States. So the question is, you can go into a store in Colorado or Washington or Maine or Massachusetts or California, and you can buy marijuana to enjoy with your friends. But a federal official can come and arrest you for doing this. But the state will not arrest you. And then the question is, which court will see you and what judge will do what? We don't know. This is a society that is falling apart. It can't function. It can't function. And that's the most important thing to keep in mind. Okay. The sanctuary movement is a movement overwhelmingly of resistance. It has, so far, no positive program other than to resist the arrest and deportation of immigrants, something that has been going on from the first days of the United States. And for those of you who don't know, Bill Clinton in the 1990s arrested and deported many immigrants. Mr. Obama arrested and deported millions of immigrants. The difference between Clinton and Obama is they didn't make a big public thing of it. They gave speeches in which they said that they were going to do something, but what they did was kind of quiet. All that Mr. Trump is a big loud mouth who says proudly, because it's politically clever, what he's going to do. But he, in fact, hasn't done much more than Mr. Obama already did, and it's not clear he will. So please understand this is a long, ongoing process. What happened in the last election was that Mr. Trump understood that the issue of being hostile to immigrants, which Obama had done and which Clinton had done and others before them, was now politically attractive, politically clever. And so he made an enormous issue of saying it loudly and aggressively. Why? Why now? And the answer is as old as Methuselah. The American society is falling apart. And first and foremost is the economy. You cannot, in my opinion, understand what's happening to immigrants, at least in the United States. And I present this in the hopes that it will have some relevance and use for you in Europe. You cannot understand it without the economic reality. For the last 40 years, the real wages of American workers, I'm an economics professor, so allow me. The real wages, which is the money you get adjusted for the prices you have to pay, the real wage, is flat. The American worker, the average American worker, cannot buy any more things with his or her wage today than they could in 1978. That's a staggering reality for the United States, because in the previous 150 years, the real wage went up. That's why Americans have the high standard of living they had. It's a culture in which the people were told that they lived in the country that God loved the most. My apologies for the building. They were in a country that got only richer. They were in a country where every child would do better than their parents. And every parent knew that their child would go on to do bigger, better things. For this country, which promised this American dream to everybody, to be unable to provide it is the most fundamental political trauma you can imagine. When I talk to a German audience, it's a little bit like the 1922-23 inflation, when all the savings accounts of German families disappeared. And they were suddenly confronted with all those years of saving money, which could now buy you a quarter pound of butter. In the United States, we are not beginning yet to deal with that trauma. In the 80s and 90s, the way the American working class dealt with it was in two ways. It borrowed more money than any working class in the history of the world ever borrowed. We are the pioneers. The credit card. All American families today borrow money to buy their house, borrow money to buy their car, carry half a dozen credit cards in their wallet, and now run $50,000 to $100,000 per child for a college education. And the American working class is furious, exhausted, anxious about these debts which it cannot pay. And it has to have somewhere to go with this anger, with this upset, with this fury. There is a danger that that fury will become anti-systemic. I should tell you, because it's changed my life personally, that it is now possible to be openly critical of capitalism in the United States publicly in a way that wasn't true for the last half century. It's very important. Mr. Sanders could be a socialist and be popular. People like me, who are professors of economics, can come out from underneath a rock and announce, we don't like capitalism either. And Americans love it. They really do. I do a weekly hour radio show and television show in the United States. Goes to about 2 million people. German flies must have some real interest in me. And I can talk about what's wrong with capitalism all I want. And I do it as much as I can, because I enjoy it. But here's the serious part. A working class traumatized by the end of the rising standard of living, by having postponed the denouement by borrowing money, which they can't do anymore. That's finished. There is no more way to keep the consumption going. And they are very, very angry and frightened for themselves and their children. What Trump figured out was use the immigrant as a scapegoat. Tell the story that all of this economic difficulty is because of these people who are taking your job and raping your daughter and stealing your money and all of that, which he does openly and repeatedly. And that's how he became well known as a candidate, if you remember, early in 2016. So we're going to have in this society a fundamental challenge. We are already arresting and deporting immigrants by the millions. We have a polarized society that has become more unequal than we have ever seen it for a century. We are now back to where the United States was before World War I in the inequality. And this in a country that promised everybody that we would all be in the middle class. We can't. It is a trauma, and it is going to play out in ways that threaten every one of you. Unless you are blind, you should have already figured that out. Mr. Trump has his finger on that. Who knows what he's going to do in North Korea, in Iran, we are in the hands of an extreme right-wing collection of people who come from the far right of the Republican Party. They now have the power. They are working very carefully to cultivate the military, which they've done, the biggest banks in America, which they've done, the corporate structure, which they're working on. And they deflect the mass of people with an attack on immigrants. So, what has the left in America done? And that's the last thing to suggest, because it's a kind of positive program and may bear some relationship to what is being discussed here, with which I am in full agreement. And the interesting thing you might find is that we too are looking to work with the churches and the cities and the states. We have abandoned the federal government, and we've abandoned them like a strategic decision because they have been captured by the other side. We can't move in there. The federal government is controlled by the business interests, the Republican and the Democratic parties. And the difference among them on economic questions is very small. So we're not doing that. We're going at the state and local level, as you are. That's why this sanctuary movement is interesting for us, because it's our allies, it's our audience, it's our way to go forward. But the particular political program we've developed is more specific and a little different from getting money from the federal to help develop the municipality in the ways that Dr. Schwan explained to us. Our focus is on a new organization of work. And for lack of a better term, I'll give you the term we use in the United States, worker cooperative. A new way of organizing an office, a store, or a factory. Namely, instead of owners, shareholders, and a board of directors that they elect to make the decisions, this is a program to demand the democratization of the workplace. In other words, the workplace will be one worker, one vote, all decisions democratically. What you produce, how you produce, where you produce, and what you do with the profits. That's a program which we call socialism of the 21st century. It's not about the government planning. It's not particularly about the government taking over industry and operating it. It's not that. It's not against that, but that's not what it's interested in. It's in the transformation of the workplace. And the idea will be that is a solution for an economy that has broken down for the mass of people. If workers themselves, wherever they work, make the decision where production is going to happen, no more exodus of jobs. No more polarization of wealth and income because tiny numbers of people get the wealth, et cetera, et cetera. Last step. There are now thousands of worker co-ops in the United States. They're forming every day. One of the most important movements is among immigrants because they can't get jobs in the regular capitalist industry, so they have had to form co-ops. They become the models and the leaders for something that is then explained to the native workers as in their best interest too, and that works. Now we have immigrants and white workers, Native American white workers, in a joint product that benefits both of them. And our view is if you don't do that, the ability of Mr. Trump and Mr. Clinton and Mr. Obama to split and use immigrants as a scapegoat will simply continue for as long as they wish it to. But having a positive program that excites people, not only does it excite them because a democratized workplace is an attractive idea, but for most Americans, they have no connection in their mind between that interesting idea and the Soviet Union or the People's Republic of China, against which 50 years of animosity have been so carefully cultivated. So that's what we're doing in the United States as a program of social and economic change, as a response to the breakdown of capitalism in our country, which serves only the top 4 or 5% and is perceived as such by the American people. That's why they voted for Mr. Sanders by the millions. It is a radical new situation in the United States, and it will ramify across all sectors of our society, including this struggle over immigration. But this struggle for economic change around the worker cooperative, a radical decapitalization of enterprise and economy, strikes us as the most promising strategic way forward to get the kind of results we're all interested in. So let me stop with that. Soll ich hier bleiben oder?
Einen Augenblick. Ja, ganz vielen Dank. Das war sehr eindrucksvoll und auch das wieder bietet eine Menge Stoff für morgen. Darüber ist gut zu reden. Das, was Sie gerade zuletzt erzählt haben über die Work Co-ops und die anderen Formen von Shops, die sich bilden, es hat mich ein bisschen erinnert an die Sachen, die wir in der Ausstellung gesehen haben. Und ich muss einfach nochmal für alle sagen, auf welche Ausstellung wir uns beziehen. Nämlich Making Heimat im Architekturmuseum, eine wunderbare Ausstellung, die zum Beispiel sich Offenbach vornimmt und Offenbach anschaut und überlegt, was hat sich da eigentlich ereignet und welche Chancen liegen in einer Emigration, einer Immigration und welche Formen von Entwicklung sind möglich, wenn bestimmte Voraussetzungen beachtet werden und eingehalten werden. Und da gibt es eben zum Beispiel auch das sich selbst entwickeln von anderen Formen von Ökonomie. Es ist wunderbar zu sehen und daran kann man, glaube ich, mal ein bisschen schauen. Ich fand sehr beeindruckend, dass Sie deutlich gemacht haben, was die Krise in den USA ausmacht. Der Zerfall auf der einen Seite und die Chancen, die vielleicht darin liegen werden. Ich fand sehr beeindruckend das Beispiel des Gouverneurs von Kalifornien, der dann sagt, für mich ist der Ansprechpartner nicht mehr Washington DC, nicht mehr Capitol Hill, sondern China. Würde es von Bedeutung sein für Solidarity Cities oder Sanctuary Cities, wenn jetzt Gesine Schwans Vorschlag umgesetzt würde, wenn wir in Deutschland jede Menge Solidarity Cities hätten und wir zum Beispiel auch dann über eine Europäische Union andere Formen der Unterstützung für solche Programme bekämen, wäre es denkbar, dass dann Städte wie Pittsburgh und andere sagen, der Ansprechpartner für mich ist nicht Washington, sondern Brüssel oder Berlin oder Frankfurt oder Frankfurt? Also wo eine andere Form von Städtepartnerschaft entsteht?
Wir suchen Partner. Und wenn wir hier in Europa Partner finden, wunderbar, werden wir das machen auch. Alles ist jetzt möglich bei uns. Was nie vorher in meinem ganzen Leben möglich war, ist jetzt möglich. Politisch, ideologisch. Es ist eine fantastische Zeit für uns. Ich muss Ihnen auch sagen, dass zweimal die Woche müssen wir Danke geben zu Herrn Trump. Er bringt uns jede Woche Tausende von Leuten, die wollen irgendwas tun gegen alles. Das ist wunderbar. Komm schon, komm.
Okay, also das wird sicher morgen das Thema sein. Das ist auch wahrscheinlich eine gute Stimmung, dass alles möglich ist. Ich würde jetzt gerne nochmal die Frau Schwan und Frau Häuser bitte nochmal hier vor. Wir nehmen hier nochmal Platz.